What if the proof of your divine origin isn't hidden in a book or a ceremony, but lightly encoded in the geometry of your own body, an energetic signature linked to the pineal as its central node? Centuries ago, some teachings that pointed people toward that possibility were pushed aside. Tonight, I want to show you where that teaching points, why it was guarded, and how you can test it for yourself, gently, safely, and without requiring anyone else's permission. According to manuscripts recovered at Nag Hammadi and a teaching attributed to Jesus in what scholars call the Gospel of Philip, there was once an oral science that allowed people to self-verify their origin. These texts are not part of the canonical Bible. They represent an alternate tradition, Gnostic testimonies and imaginations that were preserved at the margins. I mention them because they record a persistent theme, that human beings carry marks or seals that attest to a higher source. I will qualify these claims as I go, and I do not present them as mainstream doctrine. Treat them as historical, provocative testimonies that invite personal verification rather than institutional acceptance. Now imagine a cosmology stripped to its essentials. There is a primal source, the monad, whose light fractured into sparks. You are one of those sparks, a fragment that remembers, faintly, the unity from which it came. Between that source and our everyday perception, a secondary artisan fashioned the world as a dense, ordered place. In many ancient texts, this artisan is called the demiurge. Around that craft operate custodial intelligences often named archontes. They set the rules of perception and favor particular narratives about who we are. The claim these traditions make is not merely theoretical, it is practical. They propose that the monad left a line of communication, a resonant node that can be reawakened. I am calling that node the pineal for the purposes of this conversation, not as a medical diagnosis or as a claim about anatomy, but as a way to name an energetic hub, a frequency center that, when sympathetically activated, opens recognition. When we speak of energetic implants in the pineal, hear me. I am not saying someone surgically inserted a device into your gland. I am proposing a metaphor that maps an energetic system. Think of the pineal as a lighthouse at the center of an inner bay. Around that lighthouse are 3 channels or beacons, peripheral marks that act like access points or signatures. In the old Gnostic notes, these appeared as marks on the body. Reframed into the language I want to use today, they read as an origin mark, a perception channel, and a command seal. They are not necessarily visible scars. More often, they are felt as subtle lines of resonance, small intensities of attention, tiny zones where memory or authority can be touched. The first peripheral signature we will call the origin mark. You will locate this at the base of the skull, where the head meets the spine. In the metaphoric map of the energetic pineal system, this point is a kind of entry, a place that, when lightly touched, can bring a sense of rootedness into your memory of origin. Many traditions speak of the base of the skull as a hinge between the interior sky and the animal body. If there is a seal here, it holds the imprint of how you descended into embodiment. The second is the perception channel. In the older testimonies, it often appears along the hand, the lateral line that runs from the thumb edge out toward the wrist. Think of the hand as instrument and antenna. This lateral hand line is a sensor. When it aligns with the pineal frequency, your ability to distinguish subtle signals, inner images, pre-reflective knowing, the feel of presence, becomes clearer. It is not a guarantee of extraordinary visions. Rather, it is a tuning fork. When it rings, ordinary perception shifts toward detection of the subtle. The third is the command seal, felt at the center of the sternum, at the hollow place where breath meets intention. This point is the place where declaration and authority can be centered. Historically, seals conveyed legal force. Spiritually, a seal at the sternum grants a kind of inner permission to speak your remembering into being. It is the center where voice and embodiment agree. All 3, I propose, behave like peripheral nodes connected to a central energetic hub. the pineal frequency. They do not prove anything to an outside observer. They invite an inner verification. They are pointers. When you touch them, breathe, and make a clear declaration, you test whether the system that tradition described is active inside you. Before we move into the practical checking, a necessary clarification. What follows is a spiritual and energetic practice, not medical advice. These sensations are subjective. If you experience any physical pain, dizziness, or health concerns, stop and consult a qualified medical professional. This is about inner verification, not diagnosis. If you want more guided activations like this, subscribe now, so you can return to these exercises and build familiarity over time. Begin by settling into a posture that feels steady. You can be seated or lying down. Close your eyes if that feels safe. Otherwise, soften your gaze. Place one hand lightly on your lap or your chest. Breathe slowly. Inhale through the nose for a count that feels natural to you. Hold for the briefest beat, and exhale fully. Repeat 2 more times, each breath arriving a little slower than the last. With those breaths, you are turning off the rushing circuits and inviting a quieter register where subtle information is perceptible. Now, with your fingers soft, bring your hand to the base of your skull, the point where neck and head meet. You will feel muscle, bone, the warmth of your skin. Rest 1 or 2 fingers gently there. Do not press hard. The aim is sensitivity, not force. As you hold that place, take 3 slow breaths and notice what speaks. Pay attention to any sensations: warmth, coolness, a subtle pressure, a sense of being steadied, or even nothing at all. Some people feel a small ringing, like the afterglow of a bell. Others perceive nothing but calm. All responses are valid. If an immediate memory surfaces, a name, a color, a smell, note it without argument. If skepticism arises, notice that too. Often, the mind will produce immediate explanations. It's just muscle. I'm imagining this. This is nonsense. These are expected. Move now to the lateral line of your hand. Turn your hand so the outer edge, the side with the little finger, faces you. With the opposite hand, trace a light line from the base of the little finger along the outer wrist toward the forearm. Some people will recognize an anatomical line. Others will sense a boundary of attention. Rest your finger along that line and breathe 3 times, listening inwardly. The perception channel often answers as a shift in clarity, a narrowing of internal chatter, a flicker of imagery, or a sudden, tiny sense that something is seen without visual input. You might notice a subtle expansion along the palm, as if the hand is briefly more porous. Again, no single experience is the correct one. Notice whatever arises. Finally, place 2 fingers at the center of your sternum, the hollow area between the collarbones and above the breastbone. Lightly press, not to hurt, but to feel. Breathe in, and as you exhale, allow your chest to soften. This command seal tends to respond with a felt permission, a small unblocking that allows a declarative stance. You might feel a warmth, a tightening that resolves, or simply a clarity about what you would like to say. Hold this point for 3 breaths and notice whether the voice inside feels steadier. At any point, if the sensations are strong or unsettling, stop. Sit quietly until you feel balanced. Remember, this is exploration, not a test you must pass. Some people continue to feel nothing on the first attempt. That is common. The system is often conditioned to be quiet. Resonance can be cultivated. Repetition over days or weeks often increases sensitivity. I want to pause here to acknowledge something crucial. The mind's immediate rejections are part of the landscape. Expect them. Predictable thoughts may sound like this. This is superstition. I'm being fooled. I want more proof. These are not neutral observations. In the Gnostic model, they are interpreted as defensive signals. Archontic tendencies that prefer doubt because doubt maintains the system's status quo. That does not mean the thoughts are false or that you should suppress them. It only means they are useful data. When a skeptical comment arises, do not engage in argument. Instead, note it. Name it silently. Here is skepticism, and return your attention to the sensations. Observation without wrestling is the discipline. If you felt something in one or more of these places, take a moment to ground that experience. Describe it to yourself in simple terms. What color did the feeling evoke? Was it loud or quiet? Did it have a temperature? If you can, write it down later. Keeping a record is helpful because the signals are often faint at first and grow clearer when noticed across sessions. When you are ready, we will do a short activation. This is not a promise of transformation. It is a compact ritual, an energetic rehearsal, that aligns the three peripheral points with the central resonance you are calling the pineal frequency. The activation uses a 9-word declaration derived from the intent to remember, to open perception, and to claim inner authority. If speaking aloud is not appropriate for your setting, whisper or think the phrase with intentionality. Place one hand on the base of your skull, the other on the center of your sternum, and let your lateral hand rest lightly along the outer edge of the opposite hand, so all three channels are acknowledged. Breathe in deeply, and on the exhale say clearly, in 3 parts. I remember origin. I open perception. I claim authority. Repeat the declaration 3 times, matching each phrase with a slow breath. Inhale, speak the first phrase as you exhale. Inhale, speak the second. Inhale, speak the third. Allow your voice to land in the chest when you speak, and imagine the sound traveling inward to the central node. After 3 repetitions, sit quietly and listen. Notice whether the environment inside you has shifted, a softening of barriers, an arrival of clarity, or a simple quiet that feels like more room. Again, a brief reminder. This is a spiritual and energetic practice and not medical advice. The sensations you feel are subjective and variable. If you have a history of trauma connected to touch or to the body, move more slowly, or opt out of physical contact and keep the practice imaginal only. Safety and consent with your own interior are paramount. For many, the act of naming and declaring is itself liberating because it interrupts habitual self-doubt. The Gnostic testimonies emphasized inner verification. You should be able to know by your own experience. That is why I invite you to practice this activation in private across several days. Small, persistent repetitions tune the system far more reliably than a single dramatic event. In your journals and in your interior reports, you may notice patterns. Perhaps the base of skull touch yields a memory image more often after midday. Perhaps the hand line grows more responsive when you have just finished a contemplative practice. The command seal might feel firmer when you assert a small truth in daily life, a moment you speak honestly with a friend or set a boundary. These correlations are important because they show the practice is integrative. It is not an escape from reality, but a reorientation within it. Now, I want to briefly address a question that will occur to many listeners. If the pineal is an energetic hub, and these marks are residual signatures, why did institutions suppress these teachings? That is a complex historical and sociological question, but a simple hypothesis will suffice for our purposes. Any teaching that invites direct, individual verification of origin threatens systems that mediate authority through channels: clerical, bureaucratic, institutional. The Gnostic texts suggest that when people can know for themselves, intermediaries lose monopoly over spiritual identity. Institutions consolidate power by standardizing truth. A tradition of inner verification disperses power back to the individual. Whether you read that as political, cultural, or spiritual makes little difference to the practical question. The knowledge was historically sidelined, and recovering it requires discretion and practice. I also want to be careful not to reduce this to a binary of good versus evil. Institutions are made of people and practices. Many communities preserve life, ritual, and moral frameworks that help individuals thrive. My point is narrower. Certain currents of knowledge that emphasize personal experiential verification have been marginalized because they complicate centralized narratives. If, during your practice, resistance mounts in the form of anger, confusion, or fear, stop the exercise and breathe until you feel steady. If a strong emotional release occurs, treat it as a sign that something deep has been stirred. Ground by drinking water, contacting a trusted person, or taking a walk. If unusual psychological symptoms arise, seek support from a mental health professional. Spiritual practice should not substitute for clinical care. Before we close, let me offer a practical orientation for integrating this work into your life. The activation is not a one-off dramatic initiation, it is micro-practice. 10 minutes before sleep, touch the base of your skull and breathe for 5 cycles. During a morning pause, trace the lateral hand line and notice what opens. When you need to speak firmly in daily life, center your hand at the sternum, breathe, and let the declarative register settle. Over weeks, these small acts compound. The nervous system learns new expectations and becomes accustomed to a different scale of inner communication. If you want to continue, practice with curiosity rather than expectation. Keep notes. Use the word recognition in the comments below if this exercise resonated with you or if you experienced any of the sensations described. Share a brief sentence about what you felt. No dramatic claims, just honest witness. Community recognition matters because it helps normalize inner verification as a shared possibility, rather than an isolated oddity. I will leave you with a short spoken prayer you can use as a closing that is declarative and present tense. Place your hand on your sternum or simply rest it on your lap. Speak these lines slowly, as your breath allows. Source. Let memory whisper through my body. Allow perception to sharpen in trust. Grant me the calm to claim my voice. These are not promises that the world will change overnight. They are invitations to a steadier interior authority. Thank you for taking this exploration seriously and for respecting your own pace. If this message spoke to you, leave the word recognition in the comments and subscribe to receive further guided activations. Practice gently, honor your limits, and remember that recovery of a buried knowledge is less a race than a patient, steady turning back toward the light that first sparked you.